I've determined that it is not prudent for the members of the Economic Development Commission or staff to convene in person for this morning's meeting. Therefore, the members of the EDC are attending this meeting by video conference. Those same conditions require barring the public for in-person attendance. In light of those limitations, the public is invited to attend and listen to the meeting through Zoom platform or by phone as indicated on the meeting agenda. To comply with the Open Meetings Act requirements for virtual meetings, this morning's meeting is being recorded. Commissioners, can you all hear that? Is your video working and your audio working?
Yes.
Yes.
Sounds good. And,
good morning. This is Mike Elliott. I'm sorry I'm joining late. I'm having trouble connecting, so I'm on via phone right now, and I'm trying to connect via Zoom.
You're not alone. Denise had the same problem. But and there, Pam, call the roll. Take attendance, please.
Yes, Mike Elliott.
Here.
Jay Levin. Nina Hall.
Here.
Erwin Steinberg.
Here.
And Roger.
Here. First order of business then is the review and approval of the minutes of the last meeting. It's been circulated. Everybody has had a chance. Are there any corrections, additions, modifications? Is there a motion to approve?
I move we approve the minutes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second. It's
I'll
Mina.
second.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, the motion is carried, passed. And the next item on the agenda is the Restaurant Association. I saw some of the notes from Denise, thanks, but Pam, do you want to tell us what's going on with that?
Yeah, the International Council of Shopping Centers, the ICSC.
I'm sorry, yes.
They're having a seminar, as we mentioned before, August 26th. And I have, I'm going to be on that webinar. Denise clarified that we do have a sub-membership under the Long Grove Village membership of the ICSC. So Denise arranged to set it up, I know, for me. Was there anybody else, Denise, that was able to join under that sub-membership?
Yes, I signed up you, Mina, and Jenny.
And I'll be
Okay.
attending. I'll be also on the Zoom that virtual call tomorrow.
Oh,
That's
great.
great. Oh, that's great. Because that's good, Mina. I thought maybe that we could both kind of report on that in our September 8th meeting. So that's good. And you know, we'll see. I mean, I think it's a good. It is actually a very, very good deal. You know, that we're able to become sub-members under the Long Grove membership and attend these various webinars for no cost. So that's wonderful.
Looking forward to hearing what you learned at the next meeting. Lake County Partners, what's the status there in terms of our continuing the relationship and building and growing it?
I set up a conference call with Ron Lance later in the week, and we thought we would invite him to an EDC meeting, and you know, possibly the September 8th meeting or the second meeting in September. We'll see what his calendar and schedule is. I wanted to ask you, you know, basically, you know, what the kinds of things I think we need him to present are the resources, you know, that they can provide to new businesses that locate to Long Grove, and also, you know, the kind of help that Lake County Partners is is set up to provide us, assisting with some of our economic development needs. So, maybe he can inform us about that, what types of resources they have. And, looking at their website, they provide help even with finding site selections, site locations, so we can ask them about that. I don't think there's any in Long Grove that are on their website, but we could talk to them about it.
Maybe get some added.
Right.
It's already
right.
added. No. I was just going to say, I think they have a link for once our website once they fix their Lake County website, they're adjusting it right now with a new provider and they're having a new website. I've already mentioned to them that the village website link to Long Grove is broken. They have the wrong website address. I've already addressed that on our first call with Ron. And so, and I emailed Barbara, who was taking care of this whole new rollout of the website. So once we have that, they should be able to access links. And related to site selection, I mean, what Lake County Partners does related to site selection is they can, if someone says, I need a 50,000 square foot facility that does X, Y, or Z, that has 36 foot clear, stuff like that, they can say, okay, well, these are all the ones we have in Lake County. All they can do is direct. And I agree that once our link is corrected, because our site on our website right now, the microsite shows the available buildings. And that's assuming that our website is still current. But usually, all site selectors, myself included, I mean, we look at CoStar, we look at lots of other avenues for available buildings. So if it's not listed somewhere, then, Lake County Partners will do some of it, but most site selectors know what they're doing before they even come to Lake County Partners. So just clarifying that.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mina. That's helpful. And, we can see if Ron can present, other resources that they have for new businesses. I know, like I said, looking at their website, they have possible sources of financial assistance that they could show to a new business, or what kind of government agencies they need to go to for getting approvals on development and, resources for infrastructure. So I think it's a good opportunity for Ron to come in and let us know what they can do at Lake County Partners. So if we have a prospect, we can refer them to Lake County Partners. We can explain what they can do, and we just have a better handle on what those resources are. So I'll make sure, I'll get that invitation going to Ron, and hopefully he can attend the meeting in September.
Sounds good. Next item is the communication directly to banks and lawyers locally. Erwin's been working on that.
Right, so the letter has been approved at our last meeting internally of developing the list of bankers and lawyers. And I want to know, Denise, should I be sending it to you in some sort of format on an Excel spreadsheet with the name and the email? Is that how you want me to do it?
That sounds good. And I know Dave is taking a look right now at just making sure that we shouldn't send it through legal, just to kind of, he didn't think so, but he's kind of assessing that right now.
Okay, so that's Dave's hands right now to make sure he and if it's the trustees need to be involved, approve that. So that would be fine. I will, Denise, send you the list by the next meeting, and we can figure out the next steps to send this out then.
That sounds good.
Okay? Okay.
Great. The next item is business flow chart. Mike's been working on that.
I have. I mentioned in our last call that I finally had my call with Dave. He sent over a draft of a flow chart. I'm going to make that more linear and update that with some more detail. I'm waiting to finish that up until I have my conversations, just to be safe, with Historic Downtown Long Grove Business Association, because I want to get their input on, you know, why they chose Long Grove. I have Mike Marr's input. I'd like to get Jesse's too, and see if there's anything that I'm leaving out of that. So hopefully I'll have that conversation with one or two of the members from the association, and have that ready to go for next meeting on September 8th.
Is Rita here? Yeah, Rita, would you mind if I put off the discussion about the interviews and do the business with the gentleman with the Census Project Innovation first? I think Rita's in listen mode. You know, I think
I'm here. I'm sorry. Tell me, say it again.
I'm thinking that we do well to talk to our guest, Mr. Nuniak, about the Census Innovation Project first, and defer talking about the interviews until after that,
Oh, sure. No worries.
because I'd rather spend more time on the interview business.
Sure. No worries.
So, all right, we have Roman Dumiak. Did I get that right, Roman?
You do. Let me get my
Not bad.
video working.
And we've got a PowerPoint that he's put together, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about this project he's working on.
Okay. So let me see. Roger, would you be able to enable sharing so I can share the PowerPoint?
Right now, everybody's seeing your PowerPoints.
Okay, so you're in control?
No, Denise is.
Denise is. Okay, so I'll let Denise know when to move forward on it. Thank you. So good morning, everybody. And first, let me say thank you to all of you for allowing me to speak this morning. I'd like to do a brief introduction of myself, especially since when I first contacted Roger, he mentioned he viewed my email with a bit of suspicion. So I want to assure you all, I really am a resident of Long Grove. As part of some of the volunteer work that I've been doing this summer and fall, I'm facing an issue which I think your committee and your expertise might be able to assist with, as well as something that may be a benefit to our community in the future. So as background for myself, I've worked in IT for quite a bit of my career at Allstate Insurance, where I did software development, infrastructure strategy, and I was eventually a chief architect. In the final part of my career, which is probably the most relevant piece of this, is I was asked to lead the corporate technology innovation team, where we basically took innovative ideas from around the company and with external partner startups, we analyzed those for their potential and developed proof of concepts for insurance related products. Nowadays, you've actually seen some of those come to market, things like aerial photography with UAVs and drones, specifically for insurance rating and claims, self-service phone apps for initiating claims by consumers, artificial intelligence, changing the way policies are now rated, and capabilities in telematics where you can pay for insurance based on how much and how well you drive. Since I retired from Allstate a couple of years ago, I've remained active in a number of groups looking to use innovation and technologies for social good. So I participate in Chicago-based innovation groups, and I'm also a member of the State of Illinois Innovation Council. I do work with DePaul University and their innovation lab. And this year, I was asked to work with the federal government, specifically with the US Census Open Innovation Lab. So if you could move forward to the next slide. Thank you. Most people are not aware of it, and I certainly wasn't, that within the Census Bureau, there is actually a group called the Open Innovation Lab. This group acts as a collaborative hub to bring together, so one slide back, I think. Okay, we can stay on this one. They do 4 primary activities. They have something called the Opportunity Project, which promotes and advances those innovative ideas leveraging federal data. the Civic Digital Fellowship, which acts as an internship program for students who want government careers. They have a program called Census Accelerate, which you've seen the marketing and educational aspects of Census 2020, the results of that coming out. And finally, they provide what's called human-centered design training to other federal agencies. Next slide. So let's see, let's go ahead and do, so the initial work that I've been working on, just to go back, let's go back half a step. It might be useful to give you some additional history. As I'm sure you all remember, the technology and political meltdown of the 2013 launch of healthcare.gov, or Obamacare, and that website. After a squad of Silicon Valley techies came in to help the Obama administration fix that site, it became obvious to the White House that these types of technical workers could help in other parts of the government. So in 2014, the White House launched 3 innovation-focused teams: the U.S. Digital Service, the Presidential Innovation Fellows, and a group called 18F to transplant some of that startup energy, Silicon Valley expertise into the federal government. As a result of that, the Technology Opportunity Project was launched within the Census Bureau in March of 2016. They are patterned after the US Digital Service and what they do, but they look specifically at ways to leverage the vast amount of federal and local government data to empower communities with information about critical resources such as affordable housing, quality of schools, and jobs and businesses in the area. In the past 4 years, people who have participated in TOPS have created over 100 digital products. Today, TOP is held up as a model for how government agencies can collaborate with each other and what's referenced as open data, and has been included in a number of policies. In 2019, as a matter of fact, Representative Dan Lipinski, Democrat from Illinois, District 3, a little bit southwest of us, introduced the Opportunity Project Act of 2019 to permanently authorize that program. Let me just take a minute now. Does anybody have any questions on the background of what TOP is and where it came from? Good. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide, please. So how they work is, as federal agencies, they create a challenge with data-driven solutions in mind. The Census Open Innovation Lab, or as they refer to themselves, COIL, facilitates the work between the various parties using human-centered design principles and Agile as a project methodology, which means that the work is time-boxed into 12-week increments to deliver various projects. This year, 4 initiatives were identified by various federal agencies. The 4 initiatives centered around creating a STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics pipeline, opioid crisis mitigation, strengthening the workforce primarily through training efforts, and then the one I'm involved in is called the Built Environment. It's called Built because it's more about the impact of man-made structures in rural and small towns. That's to contrast it with the people-related issues or natural environment issues that you see in the other types of activities before this. Those focus more on social justice and environmental, air quality, oceans, agriculture. Built is like more about human-made structures in rural and small towns. Next slide, please. Each team signs up for a challenge. Those challenges are in 12-week increments. Let's go to the next slide. Other groups of federal employees, data experts, user advocates, and product advisors like myself offer guidance and feedback. So they're really trying to be cross-collaborative across not just government agencies, but private industry, universities, et cetera, which is kind of how I've gotten involved with them. Let's go to the next slide. During that 12-week project sprint, there are milestone activities along the way. The solution teams are currently in the user research phase. Next steps would be to analyze that research, finalize a problem statement, and look at various federal data sources. The effort actually culminates in teams presenting their first release in October, and then the demos of the final products to government, industry, media, and other stakeholders in an open press demo day in December, which is that final bullet. Let's go to the next slide. As I mentioned, over the past few years, TOP has worked on over 100 different projects across 12 different federal agencies. You can see some examples of common user interfaces for the built environment. They tend to utilize a GIS or graphical information system or interactive mapping user interface. So you can see that kind of Waze, Google Maps kind of interface gets to be very popular with people in the built environment. Similar to what we have, for example, in the Long Grove website for available properties and sites. Next slide. Drilling down to the, the built environment sprints, there are actually 4 initiatives within, or 4 challenges within that initiative, as well as 4 different sponsoring federal agencies. So HUD has sponsored a economic self-sufficiency for low-income families. The US UNHCR is looking to projects that can help recently resettled refugees. The one I'm working with is with the EPA, which is facilitating sustainable rural economic development. And the last one is Office of Management and Budget, is really a tracking or measuring project around the impact of disaster funding. You would think they would have that already, but they track where the money went, but they don't really track the impact of that money and whether it's been successful or not. Let me stay on that slide for just a minute. If you could, thank you. For purposes of today's discussion, it's the 3rd one, the Sustainable Rural Economic Development. At this point, I'd like to address a comment that Roger made back to me last week, which was that Long Grove is not a rural community. And the answer to that comment is actually, it depends on which agency you're dealing with. Interestingly, or maybe not surprisingly, there are actual multiple federal government definitions of rural, which are different depending on which agency you're speaking to. So the US Census, for example, would not define Long Grove as a rural community. They would define us as I believe it's called a rural, they have a special name for that kind of a track like we are, and I forget what it is exactly. USDA, OMB also, and even HS, Health and Human Services would not really define Long Grove as rural. However, because EPA is sponsoring this effort, it turns out that their definitions really define only 2 groups for economic development, and that's either rural or metropolitan. So Long Grove does fall into the EPA's definition of rural, and they probably should have named their initiative a little bit differently in terms of sustainable rural and small town economic development. So I'm hoping that clarifies why I kind of thought it might be useful to bring this to your attention. So next slide. And as you can see from their little title slide, along with the more publicly known environmental mission of the EPA, they also have a group that's responsible for community revitalization. The EPA and their local offices currently assist various community projects to review environmental factors that you probably thought of, like flood plans, healthcare, et cetera, as they look at alternatives to create environmentally sustainable economic development plans and initiatives. Today, they have a paper-based strategy or tool for small cities and towns for creating what's called smart growth. Okay, and the link is down in the bottom corner. One of the things they'd like to do eventually is turn that into more of an automated tool, but that's not something that they're doing just now. If you could go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, there are different groups. They're bringing together technical teams that are generally private sector companies, universities, nonprofits, and sometimes even students who build products that translate federal data into valuable tools. The tech teams design, own, and help to launch those actual products they create. Almost all of those products are free to use. They are, to a certain extent, privately funded with federal backing, and then the federal government does the marketing, if you will, et cetera, for those. So some examples of tech team participants are City Ventures, which is a venture capital firm that I'm working with now, companies that do mapping like Esri. IBM has done a lot of work with artificial intelligence and some of the data mining that they've done along the lines there. Tools like Esri, Mapbox, Microsoft Maps, and things like that. So you can see some examples of people who work there on projects. Product types, you know, they do a lot of artificial intelligence algorithms, data visualizations, interactive mapping products. Mobile applications are getting heavy. They've even created a video game and a lot of other things as part of that 100 activities that they've done over the last few years. Next slide. This year, they're working with I'm working with 3 tech teams. One of those tech teams, as I mentioned, is City Ventures. It's the VC arm of Citigroup. They created a website tool called City Builder by City. It's a free website designed to help investors, fund managers, developers, municipalities make impactful place-based investments. Last year, they focused exclusively on governor-defined opportunity zones across the United States. This year, they want to expand that work to include all small towns in the US. So there's a URL for their website as it exists today, not the newer version that they're working on. Another group is called the Governance Project. It's a small 4-person nonprofit that provides technical assistance to rural opportunity zones. They are going to launch their website for OZs in the next month. And they really have taken what is a spreadsheet financial pro forma and developed it into a web-based tool like TurboTax, where you fill in the blanks, and it helps community leaders fill in financial models for things based on land size, tax incentives, and things like that. So their website is there. And then finally, a commercial venture called the Tierra Plan is a small consulting company that designs and builds custom tools for planning with GIS or interactive mapping solutions. They look for customers that define a problem, and based on that problem definition, they create a specific customized solution for them. They have a number of past projects that are relevant to some of the built initiatives. A list of projects is at that URL if you're interested in taking a look at it. Next slide, which really goes to what my ask is. One of the concerns that they have, that they are trying to address with the overall program, is that they've done great work on a lot of good ideas. Remember the 100+ projects. But when the software gets delivered, what they find is the solutions are not sustainable. And that's kind of a code word, if you will, for they simply aren't used by the intended groups for a variety of different reasons, and they just sit on the shelf. So what my hope is that I can work with any members of the Long Grove Economic Development Commission that would be interested in reviewing the work that the tech team proposals are actually working on, taking a look at the prototypes, and meeting with me virtually in a 30 to 60-minute meeting to discuss whether or not their proposals have any merit from your perspectives and somebody who has background in local economic development, because that's one of the groups they really don't have as user advocates. Today, their user advocates are primarily nonprofits that are interfacing with tribal groups, interfacing with fund management groups, things like that. They really don't have anybody who can speak to an economic development community audience or even to investors. So we're looking for people like that. And with that, I guess the last slide should say question answers. And again,
Roman, this is Erwin Steinberg. Could you give an example of what that last ask was? You know, a project that we could evaluate or someone could evaluate of the
yeah. So what I'd like to do is
tech team
actually back up. If you could back up one more from where you are, from one more. Each of these projects has a prototype. And what I'd like to do is actually walk you through some of the screens on that prototype and get your input. All I'm looking for is really your time for 30 to 60 minutes to say, you know, in my experience as a Long Grove Economic Commission board member or committee member, this is worthless. Or this would be a feature that we would really like to see in there. Or, you know, this is a great idea, when can I have it? Things like that. Anything in between. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Just a comment by way of history, so that you know, Roman, and maybe for the rest of the board. Back May, the document I'm holding up in my hand here, believe it or not, is the EPA's framework for creating smart small business growth or small municipality growth. It's what I used when we originally launched 2.5 years ago, this EDC.
Great.
So it's kind of interesting. This is a dangerously small inbred sort of arrangement when you think about it, because the very charter when we were initiating our EDC was trying to look for some kind of model to follow, and that was the one that I found. And surprisingly, it did come through the EPA, connection. So the whole idea of sustainable growth and all of the, I think, that we're being espoused there, Roman, I think we're being fully embraced by the EDC in its founding. Along the lines of Erwin's comment, are there specific examples in terms of applicability to municipalities? Because I can think of all sorts of things, and maybe a definition of structure in your mind relative to your particular theme or thread of investment ideas. Would it involve things like parking or land use, impervious surface tracking, you know, those sorts of things? Buildings is kind of or structures maybe, you know, sort of a catch-all. Are there other areas that you can expand on where you see ideas coming through on the technology?
Well, what I'd like to do is really spend time with you, ask you a set of prepared questions, part one, and then part two, just open it up to whatever those questions and or thoughts you have, I can bring back to the teams. You know, I'll be candid with you. The Tierra Plan group, which is a consulting group, does some really, really outstanding work. They've done some work for really rural communities, farmland, which I can show you guys if you're interested. They've done some work for communities that are losing populations, but they're always driven by somebody who has a specific problem or thought in mind. And actually, to a certain extent, that's what human-centered design is. Instead of starting with, here's the problem, let's find the solution, they start with the people, define what their challenges are, and then try to come up with solutions and review them with those people to see if they'll actually use them or be able to use them. Otherwise, we wind up with what we have today. You know, I guess I'm opening the kimono a little bit. Creating 100 projects and having maybe 5 of them survive after being demoed to the press as and rolled out as really great things to use is not a good track record.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So maybe one example I think that was brought up several years back, and I don't think ever really got any traction, but maybe something worth investigating, and that is how do we extend the hours of the downtown businesses just in terms of information. We've got a lot of people even after hours that are walking the streets and that sort of thing. One of the ideas was embedded QR codes on each of the buildings that scan with a smartphone. You've got not only the history of the building, you've got their hours, you got the current tenant, you've got the map, you got a menu, for example, for the restaurants. That is a tech-enabled sort of extending the virtual hours that the businesses and the village itself are open. It does a lot for visitors, does quite a bit from a historical perspective for Long Grove residents as well. But that may be one of those ideas that if it was an idea that we were looking for, perhaps the opportunity funnel that you evaluate and bring to or for reviews maybe would include things like that. I could see it being very powerful.
Yeah, and what I'd like to do is actually capture that as part of part 2 of the interview with you guys and take those comments back. So I'm open to any suggestions you have from a physical technology perspective. Now, to give you, again, the background of where the EPA's mindset is they would like to ensure that those people who are all the way from city to county to local planners that are doing economic development take sustainable concepts in mind. I think Long Grove is way ahead of most communities. But you know, the example I sent to Roger and I'm sorry, I forget who else I sent it to, Roger, but used a rural small town in Delaware where, you know, they were really trying to build up the town. They were looking for anything they could do. And they decided they were going to build a health center based on federal funding that was going to come in and pay for 99% of it. And then the state would kick in the rest. And they completely ruined their wetlands to put this health center, you know, to build up the wetlands, to get rid of it, put the health center. And by the way, the health center's on the other side of an interstate, so nobody can get to it without getting on the interstate, driving the wrong way and coming back, you know. So it was you know, that's the kind of stuff that they want to try and avoid. And I think for the most part, Long Grove has a history of thinking those things through. And I think your thoughts are probably ahead of where a lot of other things, a lot of other people are. So I thought you guys would be a great resource to capture and present to them as thoughts.
Yeah, I was thinking the impervious surface leads to wetlands mitigation, but also transportation. And I mean, there's so many different topics that would be really good.
Sure.
Well, if you're accepting input or you want engagement from an ex-trustee or an ex-EDC member, sign me up. I'd be happy to participate.
Okay. Is there a good time and date?
Well, that's up to Roger. Roger chairs the EDC, so
Well,
EDC's formal involved.
My understanding, Roman, is you want one-on-ones, right?
They could be one-on-ones or a group. It's really up to you guys.
What's more effective for you? I mean, 7 o'clock in the morning to have everybody answer the same group of questions. You know,
Here's the, Roger.
I suspect Mike would be the same way. I'll hold my hand up in the sense that I'll send you an email and say, I'd be glad to be on your list. Here's some times when I think it might be good, and then arrange a Zoom, just the two of us or the two of you or whatever it is. Does that sound?
I can do you as a group or I can do you as individuals. Here's my concern with doing you as a group. Sometimes, you know, and I'm not picking on any one person, but sometimes some people have good ideas that, you know, they won't mention in a group setting, either because, you know, they're not thinking the same way. We get into group think is what happens, you know. So individual sometimes works better. Your preference, if you want to do it as a group and you guys feel comfortable with each other, I'm fine doing that.
Well, let's leave it at this, because there is now I'm into teaching at a college, and I've got a whole different mindset of the way the world works. It's darn hard to get people to raise their hand and say, "Oh, I'll answer that question."
Yeah.
So if we leave it at, we've got your email address. I'll send you an email that says I'd be willing to, and I suspect Mike will as well, and probably others will as well. And so it's not a matter of committing on screen in the group here. It's a matter of just if you're interested. I think from my suspicious is this some kind of phishing junk mail to this is a worthwhile project. I've been sold, if you will.
Thank you.
Roman, I would also be interested in setting up an individual as similar to Mike and Roger. So I'll send you an email as well.
All right, great. Yeah, just send me an email. In the email, please include a date and time that works for you. I really, I so much appreciate your time. I know you guys are doing a lot of work. I mean, I can see that from the agenda. So I don't want to take away from the work that you're supposed to be doing as part of this committee. But I do think it's a good opportunity to take a look at what the federal government is doing, and then maybe give them some guidance, because I will tell you they need as much guidance as they can get, at least at this time.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Okay. So with that, I'll leave it back to you guys.
All right.
Thank you, Roman.
Yeah, thank you. That was very interesting.
This is a chance for us to go to school and increase our knowledge of how the world works. So that's great.
So a government version of 1871.
Actually, the government version of 1871 is the U.S. Digital Service, which is unfortunately at this point, they're kind of hiding out within the White House, hoping not to get whacked. So I'll give you all the gossip if you want that. But their mission was to create innovation labs, like mini innovation labs in each of the agencies. And they've been successful at doing that in the Census Bureau. They've been successful doing it in HUD, as a matter of fact, and a couple of other places. So in the end, USDS should go away in favor of all of these agencies having their own innovation labs. Unfortunately, when Obama was in charge, you could tell he had more of, in fact, Pritzker is just like that, because I've been doing work with the state. They're all about generating revenue through technology, okay? It's kind of a different mindset between Browner and Pritzker, because I was there for both of them. Browner was all about using technology to save money. Pritzker is all about using technology to generate money. So, I'll be happy to come back and do a gossip session if you'd like.
Excellent.
One more question, Roman. You said through the EPA, you said there were maybe 4 or 5 projects you thought that were successful. What were they basically?
I don't know. They, for whatever reason, they kind of leave it to the actual agency to describe what they are. And so therefore, the projects I know were not part of the US Census, and they were not part of the EPA. They may have been part of HUD or HHS, somewhere in there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So I don't have, I mean, the federal government's a big thing, so I just don't have, I get the gossip, if you will, but I don't get the details all the time.
Thank you very much. It's good. Next item on the agenda is interviews with Long Grove businesses. This is something that we talked about last time that was Rita's idea, or should I say Trustee O'Connor's idea, but I spoke with her over the weekend, and she's got some ideas about how to do it. And I guess at this point, it's more to open it up to, do we want to do this? My vote is yes, but I'd like to hear from others about what they think. You may recall the idea is to find people who live in Long Grove who have had successful businesses or people who run businesses in Long Grove that work well for them.
My vote.
So I'll ask the, go ahead, Mina. Mina, go ahead.
All right. So thank you, Erwin. So I think it's a great idea. However, I think it should be more of a podcast and shorter, not a video, personally, or something, but something that someone can access later versus something live. I'm just.
Yeah, I'll just add on to what Mina said in that regard. I would just like to know what our expectations are and how we're going to measure it, whether it's a podcast or something that's a webinar. How many people are going to view this, and what do we want the outcome to be? Is it PR or is it leads? I think we have to define that before we get started on the project. And I think it's a good project, but we have to know how we're going to measure this at the end.
Well, the idea that was discussed over the weekend was Rita volunteered her husband, who does this as one of his occupations, and puts together these taped interviews that they then use to, how should I put it, Rita, sell things or get ideas going. The idea was that we'd find somebody who he could interview, let him put together one of these so we could see what it was. I guess he works in a Zoom video format, but once we get it in that format, we can certainly reduce it to simply an audio of the broadcast and turn it into a podcast if we think that's what it is. But the next step might be to have somebody be interviewed. And it was thought between the two of us that Erwin might be a good
Roger, I think my question is more of not how we're going to get it done, but what do we want to accomplish? What do we want to accomplish? Do we want to have 1,000 eyeballs viewing this? Do we want to have 1 million? Do we want to make sure everyone in Long Grove understands this? Do we want to have the International Shopping Center people look at it? So I'd like to know what the goal is. I think we can put together the how-to.
I've heard that one goal would be to create something like the personality profiles that the two Long Grove magazines do, and have something that people in the village would be interested to see that would lead them to our website. My own feeling is its primary worth would be to create a small library of why Long Grove works for my business that could be part of the EDC website that people would go back to again and again, and a podcast would make more sense. But yeah, let's hear some more people on that.
Okay, good. And we can expand on that. We could even have a link of that podcast if we send out these, when we send out other letters to bankers and lawyers, when we have other PR that we need. I think it would be good from a educational standpoint. So I'm for the idea. I just want to make sure we capture all the things that we could use it for and measure that.
Anybody else? Pam?
Yeah, I think, once we capture this data, as you were saying, Roger, I guess we have to analyze how we're going to use it. I think if we're going to make it part of our microsite, if it's something that, others can pull up, when they're looking at Long Grove as a prospective place for a business. I mean, I think it could be very useful. I also like the podcast idea, but I guess we could develop that from the interviews.
There you go, Mike.
I think if we can decide, personally, in my opinion, if I totally 100% agree with what Erwin is saying, is if this is something that, what is the intent of this? If it's truly just we don't care how many people view it, and it's just a let's highlight some Long Grove residents. I mean, you know, that's a completely different than, hey, we're trying to drive more business or trying to drive more whatever it is we're trying to drive. I mean, so I think those are two different. I mean, again,
Yeah.
because we know what we're looking to get out of this is kind of, and again, I feel like I'm gun shy after the webinar, the first series of webinar
Right.
when we had like 3 people attend. And, you know, and a lot of people spent a lot of time, like Pam, for, you know, organizing and working with like the Restaurant Association, and, you know, and it's a lot of work, and especially because Rita and her husband are like volunteering to do this. And I think, again, so amazing. But if the whole result is we just are just trying to, because out of the goodness of, you know, just, hey, let's highlight some great Long Grove residents. Great. I think that's a different outcome than, hey, I really hope we get 50 people looking at this and that drives more business to our community. And as long as we manage those expectations, I'm on board with it. Either way we do this, although I think personally, it would probably be more the first, you know, the former, that it's more just highlighting some residents of Long Grove, not necessarily driving business. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with that. You know, from what happened with our webinar show, we did, you know, I think we tried to target those webinars definitely, you know, to the heart of some important issues that came out of the, you know, going into the different phases, you know, following the pandemic. And we tried to really target that for businesses. And frankly, we didn't get, you know, as we all know, we didn't get the audience I think we thought we would. So I do have to agree with you on that. You know, I mean, if you know, at the end of the day, we're just talking about highlighting businesses, then we do have to manage that expectation. I don't know that we can set up a, you know, a video meeting and expect that we're going to get a certain audience out of it. I mean, is that part of what we were thinking?
This is Jenny. I could see, okay, if I was a small business owner and I was intrigued about Long Grove, I'm not thinking like Amazon or a more sophisticated person. But if I was a small business and I was looking at Long Grove, and if we had these videos on like as a sub bar under the EDC website, I could see some value of somebody saying, oh, how did they make it work in Long Grove? Like, you know, how did Mike Marr decide that Long Grove was the right spot? I think like setting it up and expecting people to show up is unrealistic. We have had no success with that, but I feel like as somebody that's maybe exploring, you know, having an interview with a successful business in Long Grove might be really helpful or, you know, inspiring.
So, so in other words, Jenny, I think we're thinking of this more of as an archival tool in, you know, maybe our EDC microsite. So people would have some examples of businesses they could pull up and potentially, you know, get some insight into developing a business in Long Grove versus actually let's say a meeting that we're going to invite people to attend. So it's more of an archival tool. Is that correct? Is that what we think that this would be most useful as?
Yeah, I'll pitch in on that topic. I think that would be the most we could expect from it. I don't think they should be live events at all. Again, echoing Mina's concern of the very little attendance on our webinars, but yeah, I think it is a good thing to have as part of our content repository, right? So as we build out and add content to the EDC microsite on why a business might consider Long Grove, certainly having success stories from current businesses helps, and that's valid content. The other comment I'll make though is that you can't just have one or two, right? You have to maybe start with at least 3 or 4 and then maybe add a new one quarterly, so that you build up a positive content library, and then adding them over time, you're keeping that content fresh. So
Yeah,
if you,
I think that's correct, Mike. I mean, I've sent Rita a suggestion of a starting list of individual businesses we should consider. I know, Rita, you were building on that list, and we should set up, a formal list of who we're going to invite and get their buy-in before we start. But Rita and I have been developing a list.
Okay, so maybe I could just try to frame this out. So maybe it's to develop a library on our microsite with a minimum starting with 3 business owners, and I'll just throw this out, every 6 months we add 1. So we have this on our to-do list. I would also recommend not only the 2 businesses, but maybe even the new owners of CF properties as to why they located in Long Grove and what they're interested in doing with the property. And I think that if we start this library, we can always use it for marketing purposes on other projects that we're working on. So that would be my recommendation to get this going. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think in terms of, how we select businesses, I think it will be helpful to get certain criterion in order of what we're looking for when we select a business to interview. Definitely, I'm thinking innovative ideas should be a particular focus, because, the idea that, somebody has come to Long Grove and they have this more innovative type idea, or idea that, is meant to dovetail with other businesses in Long Grove, it would be helpful to have some perspective of what, basically what we're looking for.
I think again, my opinion, if you're going to kick this off, that's great to have specific criteria, but I think we should open it up to anyone who's interested in participating in the interview and having a recording of that interview or a podcast of that interview available for the foreseeable future on the website, right? And again, if we can start with more than 3, great. But I realize that takes work and effort, and you're doing this on a volunteer basis. The other thing we don't want to do is I say we send out an invitation to as many businesses as we may think are interested, because what you don't want to do is have this backfire and have, you pick your top 3 and put them first, and then every other business in Long Grove is like, oh, why wasn't I asked to be a part of this, right? So I think we have to be inclusive of all the businesses in Long Grove. And I think, it's not like we have hundreds to choose from, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, but I think the more content we can develop up front, the better. Then we're including every Long Grove business on the initial pass through. And then maybe we get enough interest that we can start with 3 and then add 1 a month for the first 3 months and then go to a quarterly, right? If we exhaust all the people that raise their hand. And I think I'm being optimistic by saying that, we're going to have 20 businesses that will say, yeah, I'd love to be a part of this, right? So I just think let's keep it more general to begin with, and we can craft the stories as we have the interviews. Does that make sense?
How long these interviews should be?
Again, I think with the audience in mind, you can't have a half-hour podcast, right? It's probably got to be a 5-minute thing, so that if you get people, or even if we're as EDC commissioners introducing potential new businesses to the village, you don't want to send someone to do an hour's worth of homework. So just quick hits, maybe 2 or 3 questions, a little bit of time at the beginning for the business owner to outline what their business is and what success they've had, and again, some of the reasons why they chose Long Grove, and maybe one of the reasons why they're happy they're here, right? So I think it's got to be pretty to the point and concise.
If I could interject something here.
Sure.
The whole purpose of this is not only information for other business owners on how to be successful or some tricks, tips, techniques, but the question and answer period is what draws people, not one-dimensional, here's an interview, who cares? From what I have observed and from what I understand, the question answer is maybe 10 minutes. The interview is maybe 10 minutes. The question answer, depending upon the topic and the participants, can take easily 15 or 20 minutes. That's the benefit of this format. It's not to flatter current and all Long Grove business owners. It's to seek out people who had a business, were successful. Maybe they sold it, maybe they're still growing it, whatever. But it's so that other entrepreneurs, people thinking about opening a business, people thinking about moving their business to Long Grove can say, hey, this is a pretty cool town. Look at what they do and look at what their residents have accomplished. It's just a way to showcase what it is that makes having a business in this town a benefit to them, a benefit to their customers. So I don't really, if you could erase from your thought process a Long Grove living type highlight, that's not the purpose. The purpose is educational, informational, and certainly from a marketing perspective. But the question answer is that's the whole thing. That's like saying, give me the potatoes, but I don't want any steak. It's not how it's designed. Does that help? Give you any whatever?
Rita, that does help in terms of, I can see why, but I think we're all a little gun shy after the most recent webinars. And I just wanted to point out for you all, there's just what other economic development agencies do and community economic development groups do across the country. They do these little interviews with, businesses, and they do, again, short, like 5-minute videos. And then they post them on their website, kind of like what other people had mentioned earlier on this call, of putting it on our microsite for someone to look through. And as Michael Elliott said, throwing 3, 4, 5, one a month, whatever. And they're all short videos but they're not live. None of them are ever live. So I'll give you an example. If you go to a website called Think KC, they have just little like pictures of people and kind of the different businesses that they have and what they do. And these are all advertisements for why they chose these communities and that's, I think what all economic development organizations do when they do interview businesses. So I very respectfully disagree about the question and answer, because I really don't think, I go to these websites and I look and I do a really fast look, and I really am looking for bullet points more than anything. Mm-hmm. I'm not looking to listen to them for 25 or 30 minutes. So, but that's just me. I'm just saying, when I'm looking at this communities to locate businesses for my clients, that's what we do. And we're not, because we just don't have the time. We're going through, thousands of sites and thousands of communities. So I just in this example, maybe that's something that, if other people wanted to look to see that this is what other economic development communities are doing, is similarly, they're interviews, but none of them are live. They're all, just all little blurbs. Some have videos. This one specifically just have little blurbs on them. But just throwing that out there. And I hate to do this, but I have to leave for another call. But I still think they're great ideas, though. I do.
Well, that's okay. It's not a problem. When I spoke with Roger, my input is it's your sandbox. It was just an idea. And certainly we can do what everybody else does. This would be something a little different. And if it's something that you feel is not what you're looking for, that's fine too. You know, I'm simply saying that's not what this format is meant to be. So if you would like to do something more like the, whoops, excuse me, sorry. You know, the podcast kind of thing, that's fine. That's not what this is all about. If you want to sample 1 week, that can be arranged, period. If not, that's fine too. It's no big thing. It's just not what drives this particular format.
We have not seen what either of these approaches actually looks like yet, and maybe making a decision without seeing any of the products would be, the decision might be better made if we did have some examples. Rita has offered to let her husband help us to do one, and on the interview level. What about doing that for a start and looking at that? I'm sure it can be distributed amid the, among, whatever the word is, the EDC members, so that we can come back the next time and say, that really works, or that should be short, or whatever. Is that a way to approach this?
You certainly could do that. I would, just offhand, just to, for several reasons, I would suggest, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, Erwin, but why not interview Erwin at an EDC meeting? You're among friends. Invite your family, invite your friends, send it out to your clients. Hey, this is a prototype, something we're thinking of doing. Please tune in. I'd be interested in your comments. If Erwin would be amenable to being our first guinea pig.
It's just a strict interview then, right? With Q&A, with Q&A, Rita, or just
you don't
amongst
have
us people?
You don't have to do a song and dance.
Oh, I'd be glad to. As this would be a test. That's what you're saying.
Yes, yeah.
For this group.
A sample,
That's
a sample,
fine.
a prototype.
That's fine.
A sample.
Yeah, that's fine.
Then you can see.
That's fine.
You can see if this suits your needs or not. It's no harm, no foul if you ultimately say, you know, that was great, that was good, it was fun, whatever. It's just not what we're looking for. It's simply an idea. I have no big investment in it. My husband is doing me a favor. I had to call in a chit to get this. So you know, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's no big deal. To me.
I'm glad to do it. Rita, I'm glad to do it. And the rest of the team. We'll see what happens.
So if you would let your clients, your friends, your enemies, your family, just send them out. Hey, here's what we're doing. Here's a Zoom invitation. Tune in, tell us what you think. We're looking for your input. Just like Roman did. You know, he's asking for opinions and input. It's the same thing. See how it goes.
So this would be at one of the next EDC meetings as a part of the meeting?
If you wish. You know, it's a good time of day for business people. They can, you know, tune in their gym jams or in their cars or whatever they're doing. It's up to you. Makes no difference to me.
What do we think? We could reserve the last half hour of the next meeting to do this, see where it goes.
Yeah, I think that's it. I'm looking forward to, yeah, definitely. Thank you, Erwin, for agreeing to be our first star. I won't say guinea pig, but our first star.
No problem. I'm glad to do it.
Does he have to put on a tie for this?
I would leave that up to Erwin. You know, and this may be even one of those items we could use for that new system that we just purchased, where we can survey Long Grove residents, put out a question and get feedback from them. The benefit of the survey is we know that it's only going to our residents, that, you know, it's not going to Buffalo Grove, Wheeling, whatever, or people posing as residents. We could send it out and say, hey, the EDC has a question, and maybe wordsmith it a little nicer than that. We're interviewing prominent business owners, considering interviewing prominent business owners. Tune in for, you know, the maiden voyage. Give us your thoughts. Should we do more? Should we do less? Might be a good use of the survey.
Sounds like we've got a plan for the next meeting. It's good. There are only two things left on the agenda. One is about publicity coordination. And I did send an email to Bobby saying we might have the historic downtown Long Grove Business Association here this morning, and would she be interested in coming and talking about coordination of publicity. And Mike and Jesse have not managed, and Mike Elliott, have they managed to connect to talk about this explicitly?
No, not yet. We've traded voicemails. We just haven't been able to connect live, and I'll continue to reach out. Hopefully we can connect live here before the end of the week.
I really think it'd be worthwhile to have a representative from that association come and talk with us and give us their ideas.
Absolutely. And once I get a hold of him, Roger, I'll certainly invite him to our September 8th meeting.
Okay. Or the September, whatever, 23rd meeting, whatever the next one is. But, we can accommodate them, obviously. So that's an ongoing thing. And then the last item that we haven't talked about is the annual work plan, which we had, I think, nailed down last week, except for some revisions to the terms of the work plan. Anybody got any new thoughts on the work plan beyond what we had last time?
This is Jenny. I couldn't find the updated one. I don't know if is it on the Google Drive, or I couldn't find it.
I thought that Denise had plugged the changes into what was on the Google Drive, but I could be wrong.
It's probably user error.
I had sent a revised version out to Roger and Denise. I don't know if was it incorporated into the Google Drive, the village, our EDC Google Drive.
Don't know.
Well, we'll do that, and maybe we could comment on it next time, because we had some suggestions that we did incorporate into the edited version. We reordered a number of the items, the specific items, and we put in more specifics in terms of what we were going to accomplish, our activities, and we put some more specificity around the idea of transportation, what our role would be. So I guess we can redistribute that then, Roger, and
I'll make
put
sure
it on our Google Doc.
And next time we'll be able to put it up on the screen, and everybody will be able to see what we're adopting. So that makes sense, because there were budget numbers in there too, which seem to me to be reasonable numbers.
Is there any chance that I could get a copy of this before the meeting tonight? Because I know that the board had some questions and I don't know, maybe it's there and I couldn't find it, but I didn't see the revised one.
Jenny, I'll send that out to everybody.
Thank you so much.
There you go. That pretty much covers what we had on the agenda. Any new business?
The only thing is, Roger, you know, back to the work plan, I think before we plug in our budget numbers, we probably should have a discussion on that at our next meeting.
That's what we'll do.
So once everybody's had a chance to digest, you know, what our goals are and what the specific areas are that we want to target for the next couple of quarters, and I think we can try to start plugging some numbers there.
It might not be a bad idea. I'm just thinking to leave some money in the budget for a video editor if we're going to do these interviews.
Right. I mean, I think we've had a few ideas, you know, over the last couple of meetings that we haven't had an opportunity to see how we would, what kind of resources we need for that. So we should probably plug in a number for that, for our videos.
Anything else? Anybody? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'll second.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes and we're adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
No.